right, guys. This is Martha Burgess Novak, and I'm here with my really good friend, and by the way, associate. She's my colleague and my little sister, Christina McCarthy. Christina, how long have you been studying with me for? Gosh, I don't know how long.
15 years,
Yeah,
maybe.
15 years. She is my youngest, oldest client, but she is also a real close friend of mine, and I am proud to call her a colleague with me, and we are very, very excited to talk to you together, really, about change. I wanted Christina to have the experience of this because I'm very interested in her doing her own radio show one day. And I think it'll probably be sooner rather than later if she likes this experience, which I hope she will. And guys, I want you all to know we are live today, in case you haven't found that out yet. And we're at 347-850-1647. Keep in mind, this is a USA exchange because we have people listening on Facebook Live from all over the world. If for any reason we ever lose the Facebook Live feed, please mark down that we are on blogtalkradio.com. And all of our shows appear there. We have, gosh, I don't know how many, 75 archived shows or something like that. So, and they're on a variety of subjects. So we would just love for you to participate in that. And so we will be taking some calls today, but we're also going to talk to you about change. Christina and I both have a lot of opinions about this. We have
opinions about a lot of things.
We're rather opinionated women. But anyway, we do have some good advice, I think, to give you about change, and talk about how it appears and how it also, how we struggle with it in our lives, because that's the human condition until it isn't. And consciousness and the study of consciousness certainly helps this. So we always start out with a prayer. So we're going to start out with a little prayer, put us all on the same page, and then we go, okay, talking about change. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much. We are here now, open to new information that can really change our lives, that we may see, hear, sense, and know what you would have as the truth reveals itself in your enlightenment. We thank you so much. We now submit to saying we know absolutely nothing. We submit to really feeling that we know absolutely nothing, that you may move through us, minus the control that we often exert on our lives, to communicate with us directly, that we may see what our next steps genuinely are. We thank you so much, and we say this prayer now, in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening in to this show today. Thank you, and so it is. Amen. And that goes for you too, Kim. You know, you already know the name of the show, but I laugh to say the riddle is everybody wants it, everybody fears it. What is it? Change. It is change. And to explain it well, not only what change really is in the higher perspective, but also why we fear it. So we have to start back when you as you started. Now, what do I mean by that? You in gestation and beyond, you're certainly in gestation, you're receiving certain signals from your mother's chemistry about life and your father and the world and your siblings and who you are and whether you'll be welcomed or not, and fear and anxiety and joy and creativity and much, much more. You got those messages. Those are, well, hello, Lisa. We are getting messages down there since Christina has not worked with Facebook Live before. Maybe you have you?
No.
Have you been sending out things?
No.
Okay. She is not. Okay. Well, thank you, Lisa. We so appreciate that. We love you too, by the way. So during this period of gestation and the period beyond gestation, when we're out of the womb and we are surviving in the world, there is an interesting fact. And the interesting fact is there is no time to this child. There is no past, there is no future, there is only now, and by the way, what is happening in the now. So the perception is in a very fundamental part of you, the cellular part of you, that all time is now and all the bad stuff is going to last forever. All the hurtful stuff is going to last forever. It doesn't make much sense. We know better, right? But yet we have a very hard time without the knowledge that that program is actually there in transcending it. Awareness is certainly the first step to getting hold of this. So there's no sense of past and future, and the child interprets the moment as lasting forever. If it's a good moment, it will last forever. If it's a bad moment, it will last forever. But here's the rub. Because we as human beings are always more acutely aware of what hurts us, we develop, because of this, a negativity bias. And we are acutely aware of what hurts us and how to avoid it in the future. Therefore, we need to develop a system. Here comes the ego, and here comes the ego child's mind. By the way, jump in there anytime you want. We develop a system, the ego and the ego child's mind, that gives us a sense of time. It's a construct of time is a construct of the ego and the ego child's mind, because enough at about 18 months old is where this happens. Enough seemingly hurtful things, or maybe genuinely hurtful things, have happened back then, and so the ego and the ego child's mind develops to scan the future for like circumstances, so you can survive. Well, hello. Isn't that fun? We hear from Jim. So you're scanning, you see, for like situations. That's how this develops. Now, while this is the way it all started out, while this is the way that the ego child's mind, the child part of you, and the child, by the way, the child mind in the adult still reacts to life, it is only the beginning and not the truth. There's a truth that is much larger than the reaction, this fundamental thing that the ego child's mind is doing. The child's mind of you is a part of you that thinks like a child. You shouldn't vilify it. You should just realize it's there. And our whole journey to consciousness and enlightenment is transcending that, quite frankly. We can't go through life and be happy thinking like a child. This part of you is fear-based. It's the part of you that is very, very self-centric, and not in necessarily a good way. And you are egocentric. It's all about you. Now, so we talked about at 18 months old, enough bad things have happened in your life that could have been genuinely upsetting or just seemed to be upsetting you, like a drastic change in routine, for example.
But in those early years, there's so much change for a child. I mean, they're learning how to crawl and then walk and talk and eat. Like, everything is new, so everything has changed.
Everything has changed.
And, you know, a parent could say something completely seemingly harmless and loving, like, oh, you're going too fast, or,
yeah, absolutely,
you know, or something to that effect. But you take that stuff in on a cellular level, and, you know, you bump and fall when you're learning to walk, you know, those are physical hurts too. And so we get these messages, you know, that these things are not safe.
Absolutely.
You know?
Even a change in routine, when I talk about a change in routine, let's say, you know, something valid happens, like, God forbid, your mother's father dies or something, and you don't get fed for 4 hours. Well, don't you understand that because all time is now, you think you're never going to be fed again. So the world becomes very scary, because if you're not fed, you're going to die. You know?
Absolutely.
And this is how we develop these survival issues that carry on into adulthood. And the reason that we have to confront them and face them is because you're either trying to survive or you're creating a wonderful life. It's the same energy. It's just a different use of it, you see. So, go ahead,
Yeah,
Dawn.
and I was going to say, you said this to me recently, and it's really stuck. You said something about our 100% of our energy needs to be in change.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're doing anything else with our energy, we don't have 100% of it into that process of moving forward and being
Mm-hmm.
open. Everything else is just a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the other games that we're playing.
Yeah, and really, honestly, we have learned to survive by playing these games, and yet we don't call it game playing. We don't realize this until you study consciousness. One of the things that I think is powerful about consciousness and consciousness studies is it gives you a language. It gives you a language to confront yourself, to be very specific about yourself, to change in a very specific way. And I find that very powerful because without a language, you're just kind of shooting in the breeze out there.
Yeah, and I think the consciousness work gives you the ability to observe. You're able to observe without, getting so immersed into emotionally what's going on with you that you lose where you are and what the truth is. That consciousness work gives you the ability to step back and go, okay, I see what I'm doing here. I see my old pattern. I know what this is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Now, I want to go back to something that I said, which is that the child's mind is very egocentric. And in that, it's the undeveloped mind. It's the mind. And when I say undeveloped mind, I'm saying that it's not the mind with the big perspective, with the global perspective on everything. It just sees it's everything that happens to it in relationship to itself.
Yeah.
So here's where our issues start developing, because everything is your fault. You are always wrong. Your work isn't valuable, and that's how you interpret life. By the way, that's the way you should have interpreted life. Is that surprising you? Your issues are actually signposts so you can get out of the pit of the ego and on with your wonderful life. But not when we stay there. We're supposed to move, and we're going to talk about that because the title of the show is Change, and that is movement. So by 18 months old, we have found out that the world is all not light and roses. And we have already begun to interpret the world in a certain way according to what our souls need to experience and therefore get over, by the way. Okay? Therefore, get over. I get so tickled with all of these. So many of our personality tests that are out there on the market today tell you the way you are. They very rarely emphasize, and I do think our work, we have not a personality test, but a learning and communication sequence that very much says, here's the way you are right now, but here's what you could become.
Exactly. It shows you the potential.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to realize you're supposed to move. You're supposed to change. Yeah. That's actually the most natural thing in the world. And the sooner you can become comfortable with change, and even, by the way, here's something mind-blowing, radical change, the better off you'll be.
Yeah.
Now, one of the reasons that we're so afraid of change, and this show is going to be full of tips about how to not be so afraid of this, but one of the reasons we're so afraid is some of the things that we have originally said, but I want to mention another one. One of them is that when things have not gone your way, when things have changed in the past, you have stopped the energy. I want you all to think in energy. The more you guys, and I think you would agree with us, the more you have been taught to think in energy terms and not in personality terms, the better off you are, because what's happening in the world is energy-based. What's happening in you is energy-based. So we think that, oh my God, something terrible has just happened, and we shut down, we close down the energy to protect ourselves, instead of letting it spin out to our good, where it always goes. We all have the ability, you all have the choice to also think of change as good or just terrible. And that's your choice. But if you are thinking it is just terrible, I guarantee you there's some issues connected to it.
Yes.
That you have the marvelous privilege of working out, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And as soon as you catch yourself labeling something as bad, you've just shut the door. The energy has just completely stopped because you've put all your attention and your energy on this is bad, it can go nowhere else. But as soon as you open up to the possibility and you realize, the adult mind realizes that things aren't always as they seem, then you've opened the door to possibility and the flow can start again. It can go where it was meant to go take you where you're meant to go.
Absolutely. And we don't want you to close that door too soon. We'll talk to you about that even again later on in the show, because that's a really important idea. You cannot shut the door early. If you haven't gotten what you want, it's not the end. But, now here's the rub. All of us that are coming out of the ego mind or still in it want to control everything.
Yeah.
And part of control is wanting what you want, when you want it, and how you want it.
Yes.
Shall we tell them now, you aren't going to get that? That's not going to happen. That is just not going to happen, you know? We have a cute little idiom that people say in the world, tell God your plans, and, you know, that's how to make God laugh.
Yes.
The fact is, that's not the way it works, and that isn't the way it can work. That's not the way the energy works. You have to have the higher mind and go with the higher mind. That means the transcendent mind to the ego child's mind. You see, that's how it all flows. That's how it all works. That's how you go, okay, well, I wanted this and it came this way. So next time I'm going to be more specific in my creation. I'm going to be more specific with my language and my thought. You see? I can give you an example of that. So when I bought the house that we're currently in, I said to myself, I want the healthiest house in the whole world. I want the healthiest house in Atlanta. I want the healthiest house that we've ever lived in, and it will be healthy for everybody, right? All right, what I did not say about that house, am I doing this in a weird way? What I did not say about that house is I wanted it that way when we moved in.
Yeah.
So I quickly learned that I need to be more specific with my language, because as soon as I moved into the house, we had a flood, and then I had to handle mold, and we had all this other stuff, you know. So one has to be very precise in one's language, and only in the use of energy and getting things do we learn to be more and more precise.
Yes.
Okay, now going back to change, let's talk about what change is. Change is the movement of God. Don't be reactive to that word God. It's a 3-letter word to me that means energy. It's not an old man on a throne. You've heard me say this before. I believe in the energy of love. I believe not in the persona of God, but that all things are God in very high levels of ascendancy, love, or in low levels of fear and everything in between. It's all God. And we have the privilege on our spiritual journey of working from the egoic child's mind and our fear-based selves to our love-based selves, just as the world is composed of those areas as well. I mean, those degrees, I should say, from one to the other. So a child, you must understand, and the child's mind in all of us just reacts to circumstances. It doesn't create anything. And it doesn't create them in spite, because the ego child's mind is sending up a certain propaganda telling you that everything is, you should be very, very afraid. Now, I say that we need to change and be willing to change mentally, think new thoughts, emotionally, feel new feelings, physically, do new things, and spiritually, we have to find deeper levels of who we are as the aspect of God we are, as the highest self, as a larger energy that is love-based instead of the fear-based experience.
And I think you said something very important that bears repeating here. If you are reacting, you're not creating. So that's a quick way to check in with yourself and say, okay, am I reacting in this situation? And we react based on our old issues and our old patterns. Or am I open to creating something new here?
I can give you an example of that, too. I think of a telephone conversation I heard on one of the talk radio stations several years ago. And this guy had been fired from his job. The company had changed. They had gone through, a lot of downsizing and things. And the host was trying to say, well, what can you do? What can you create now in the future? And all this man wanted to talk about is how it could have been in the way it had been.
Yeah.
And how upsetting it was that it wasn't still that way. Now that's an example, I think, of the ego child's mind, while it gives you the sense of time in the past and in the future, doesn't move with the times to come into the present situation. And if our minds are stuck, we really do. And I consider it a terrific privilege. I honestly think that you do too, do you not?
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
do this work so that we can free the mind to think new things. By the way, if you hear some scratching on the door, we have quite the menagerie and this experience of our home. And we have a new little kitten. Yes. His name is Lamster.
Lamster wants to be on camera.
And Lamster would like to be walking right in front of us. We have him barred from the house, but that doesn't seem to do much good, does it?
It doesn't.
I don't know whether you all can hear it, but we can certainly hear it.
It's like scratching over here the whole time.
That we are sticking to the subject at all is kind of a miracle. All right.
But to go back to what you were saying about the gentleman who lost his job, it is normal to have that reaction, to have those old things trigger and to be sad and to have that moment. But the important thing is to realize that and move through that moment to a new moment. And working with someone is a good way to help you get perspective and be able to move through that more quickly. Working with a facilitator or a therapist or someone who does consciousness work can help you see the bigger picture and help you get there.
I want to say to that end, it's just important to start somewhere. Now, I was reared in a doctor family. My uncle, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were all doctors. My experience of growing up in the 50s was that the worst thing anybody could say to you is, you need a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
That's what my uncle would do to all the people he didn't like. You need a psychiatrist, okay? And I heard that. It was interesting because I had always, though, been a very intuitive child and followed my intuition. And so when my intuition told me that I was angry, I needed to get things out of me, I honestly did not know what I needed to get out of me. But I felt the call. I want to say that if consciousness work is what you're supposed to do, you will be called to it. I think you were called to it. Do you remember the moment of your calling? Or there were several moments?
Yeah, there were several. I think just at a very young age, I too was very aware of behavioral patterns in other people and watching energy and how the room would change based on things that were happening, and very aware of how I felt inside and the changes within me.
Yeah.
And it just became a process of understanding myself better and therefore understanding other people better.
It can come out in a variety of ways,
and
too.
then meeting you gave me the language for all of that that I was already experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand that. Even before I had intuitive experiences that said, go here, I remember you're making me think of some things. I remember that I was always the one that really could interpret very hard poetry, for example. I knew what the author was saying somehow. I got the symbolism and the metaphors and what they were doing. I remember watching television as a kid and watching ads and thinking, wow, they're missing their mark. They missed their market in this ad, you know, or isn't that interesting? I can't remember what the product is, but I laughed at the ad.
Right.
And I remember thinking that when I was just a little kid, you know.
Yeah.
If you have had experiences like that or others that might be similar, that's, I think, you saying that you've got these gifts too. Now, excuse me, I'm just trying to turn on the computer here. We want to tell you, honestly, that change is one of the most natural things in the world. It's how God takes you to your good. But first, by the way, you've got to believe in your good. And sometimes we can be so hurt by life and circumstances and by ourselves in the way we think that we think we're not going to be taken to our good. And we don't trust it one bit. So that's one of the things that consciousness work can do, is it can get all those false beliefs, the things that the ego child's mind is telling you, like it'll never be any different than the way it was with your family. You'll never be of value. You'll never be loved. You're absolutely unlovable, and it really will show you something else. Now,
yeah, I always think of consciousness work. Dropping those things, it removes all the chatter, all the white noise that's happening in your brain that keeps you from hearing the clear message from God, the clear message from your higher self.
I love that. And, I think that's a much better way of saying it than how I usually say it, because I get all flowery and talk about the garden and how you have to weed the garden if you want the things that you want to grow there to grow. Right?
Yes, that's a good analogy. I like that.
Well, but yours is clearer. But,
I'm so practical.
In our emotional bodies, seriously, the things that belong there are like forgiveness, unconditional love, awe of how it all works, compassion, joy, creativity, all sorts of spontaneity. Some wonderful things grow there, but we clutter it up with rage at our fathers and, anger that we're not getting what we want the way we want it and things like that.
Yes.
Okay. So, if change is so darn good, what is required of you to change? And I jotted some things down. I think Christina has too. First of all, you got to change your mind. You got to change your mindset. And the reason it's called a mindset is because you are set in your ways in your mind, You have to change out of the negativity bias and expect something more. Truly expect it and not fantasize about getting it, because fantasy is its own reward. You go there because real life is too scary to deal with.
And if we go back to what you were saying earlier, we need to think of everything in terms of energy. When you're in fantasy, all your energy is internal. It's all right here. It's not moving and flowing out toward the creation of anything.
That's
it's
right.
You can feel the difference in where the energy is going.
That's a very important statement. It's absolutely true. And you've got to, they did some studies several years ago. And these studies were on lucky people. Do you remember this? Did I tell you about this?
I remember us talking about this.
And who was lucky and who was not. So they took a bill of some denomination, $10, $100, I don't remember what, and they put it in the door sill of a busy cafe. And they filmed people and watched people. They interviewed them outside about whether they felt lucky or not. And some people said they felt lucky. Some people said, oh no, I'm the most unlucky person in the world. The unlucky people walked right by that bill. And they went and sat, and this is the important thing that Christina reminded me of, alone. They sat alone somewhere in that cafe. And the people that reached down and found the bill, whether they kept it themselves or turned it in, went to the counter or sat with other people, and it was a communion. And we're all not alone in this life. We're connected. And many of your blessings actually come through people. So it's a real important thing to be connected.
Yeah, and the egoic child's mind experience is very internal. It's very alone because, as you were saying earlier, it's about everything, how it relates to me. It's leaving out the important factors of the rest of the world.
That's right.
And all the other people you can connect with.
And compassion for them, too.
Yes, absolutely.
People don't realize that we can have compassion for others, but we don't have to create their lives in our lives.
Yeah.
They're two different things, But not to feel for others, and I'm kind of off the subject here, but not to feel for others doesn't, it cuts off information that we need.
Yes.
To grow and change. So it's really an indirect comment about change. Number 2, you must learn to develop a more global perspective. Now, what I want to tell you about is that the ego child's mind, as Christina is telling you, is all about me, 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 me. At the expense of you, by the way.
Yeah.
Or it's all about you, at the expense of me, which is still, because I'm the victim, all about me.
Yeah.
You see? So you can't win. It's still all about you. A global perspective is about creating a situation that is good for all. Now, the other people may or may not, they have their choice about whether they believe it or not, that it's good for them. That's, you must allow that. But that God creates a world where everything is good for everybody in this global perspective, and it allows change and growth and opportunity. And by the way, don't you think for a moment that opportunity is not in the change and growth. That's where it is. Is really one of the really powerful things about going from the ego child's mind to the highest mind, the highest self. And the global perspective is really about creating a win-win situation. I agree to agree, and you agree to agree or disagree with each other, and we're all right with it. There's a peace here. You see? The global perspective also gives you a context in which to place your whole life. Because I'm going to tell you something that's absolutely mind-blowing to the ego. There's not one moment, one reaction, one decision, one anything in your life that hasn't all been perfect. Nothing's been a waste. Shocking, huh? Because the ego child's mind goes, oh, what a waste. My husband and I laugh, and we say we put super glue on the back of our hands and then go like this, It's
so dramatic.
Nothing's a waste. Absolutely nothing. And we have to realize that everything does fit into a context, but we can't see the context until we do some work on ourselves for the more global perspective. All a grand conundrum, isn't it? Leading to the same place, consciousness. Number 3, you've got to give up trying to control everything. The human condition in the fear-based experience tries to control everything because you don't feel safe. You feel very insecure. And we are not going to get it, whatever it is, the way we think we ought to, and in the time we think it ought to come, or in the way we think it should be here, or how it should come. We're not going to control any of that. What we are charged with doing is simply wanting what we want and removing the blocks to ourselves to get it, and going and getting what we want, and then telling other people about it.
Yeah, just staying open and moving. Moving is so key.
Moving is where it all is, isn't it? Moving mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually is the key to everything, because nothing can happen to you. Nothing can go out or come in if there's not movement.
Yeah.
So the very antithesis of stopping the energy and keeping ourselves safe and hunkering down and cutting off from other people that might hurt us is going to bring us the opposite. We're not going to get anything that way, right? Number 4, we have to learn to say yes instead of no. Now, what do I mean by that? I think we will agree it's not good to say yes to everything, but it is good to say yes to all the possibilities of everything.
Yes.
And then if something is not good for you, then we say, thank you, no. So that's really important, because I notice more than anything in the world, people saying no before they say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed that with a friend of mine, and I pointed that out to his wife, because she gets so frustrated. She'll ask him to go on a trip or go do this or go do that, and he's always like, no. And he has like a million reasons for the no. But then in a few days, he might come around to the yes, but he might not. But, I told her, I said, well, his first response is always to start with no.
Yes.
So we have to start with a yes, at least the openness of a yes, the energetic openness of a yes, and see where it takes us. Because it's just information coming in, and then you decide, is this information for me? Is it not for me? What do I want to do with it?
Yes.
And that particular thing that you're saying yes to in the moment might not be the thing, but it could take you to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. But as soon as you say no, you've stopped that process.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you a real good way for you to start observing this about yourself, because if we leave this in the abstract, I think it's hard for you to catch yourself.
Yeah.
It's much easier for you to catch other people doing it
Yes.
than you, of course, because that's just the way it is with everybody. But here's how to notice it. Notice when somebody says something to you, like, would you like a cup of tea? Do you say, no, yes? Or do you say, yes, no, I don't think I want that.
Yeah.
Which one do you do in the little moments
Yeah,
like
the
that?
small things. And, someone asks you to go to the movies. What is your,
Your first response.
Yeah, your first response.
I'll go to a party.
Yeah. And I think that people that are really in tune with your bodies, maybe you'll feel it in your body more than you'll hear it in your language. What does your body do when someone asks you to do something or opportunity presents itself? Do you start to feel tense and closed up? Or do you
Constricted.
feel... Yeah.
One of the... what we were saying, I'm going to, again, take it out of the abstract and put it in the practical. If those of you that are watching this show and those of you that are listening on the radio, I'm right now holding myself very tightly. I'm crossing my arms and I'm hunching my shoulders and getting my body real tense. And I want you to do the same for a moment and feel what that feels like.
Yeah, have that experience.
Have that experience of really closing in and making yourself very tight. And now, when you have that feeling, and if I'm not giving you enough time, do this after the show for sure. Open your body completely up and just completely reveal that center of you and see what that feels like. Because energetically, that's exactly what you're doing when you say yes and no. Especially when you don't realize your motivation for saying yes and no. When you are not working on yourself, when you do not know why you are doing what you're doing, and you just say no out of issues, or you say, by the way, yes out of issues.
Yeah.
Your body's going to react by closing itself off and closing in and being uncomfortable and extra tense. I think that's a very important clue.
Yeah, I think it is even more so than the words, because as you're pointing out, a lot of people say yes out of issues. So it's not just about the words, it's about the feeling behind the words and what you feel going on in your body and energetically happening for you. Because if you're a people pleaser, you could be saying yes, 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 yes constantly. Mm-hmm. And those aren't yeses with discernment. They're just yeses because I've got to have people like me, or
that's right.
That's whatever right. The reasons are.
There was a study. Again, I seem to be going off in flights of references, but there was a study about people not wanting to be alone that came out not long ago, and they put people in a room and said you have to be alone with your thoughts for 15 minutes, but we're going to give you a button. And if you press that button, it's going to shock you. It'll give you an electric shock. And all these people, men more than women, by the way, could not be alone with their thoughts and press that button to shock themselves instead of staying with themselves, which I just find really interesting.
Yeah. because we do that, in different ways. We hurt ourselves over and over and over.
That's exactly
to
right. It's a great
avoid
metaphor.
being alone with that.
That's right.
And just processing it.
But what if you're comfortable with all those things? What if you realize that you've never made any mistakes in your life? What if everything you look at from a spiritual global perspective, and a real perspective, not a fantasy one of I'm so great, but a real one where everything's perfect and you're exactly where you should be, and tomorrow you'll be exactly where you should be then?
Yeah.
What if that? It's quite a different scenario. So the fifth thing I think we want to put on the table to you is that we have to develop, and we mentioned this earlier, a strong sense of energy. Now, you do not see in terms of energy when you start this work. You see in terms of personality, who did what to whom, right? And how much it hurts. And guilt about your doing it to somebody. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, it's all about energy and what the energy is doing. And as soon as we can get you out of the personality mentality and into the energy mentality, you will find that it's not about how you feel and what the ego child's mind propaganda is saying to you. It is about whether you're working the energy well or not for what you want and to be loving. So there we are.
Yeah, I mean, the currency of the universe is energy. It's up to you how you spend it.
That's exactly right. So you have to be more and more aware of how you're spending it if you're going to work it well.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Thing to
say.
say.
From somewhere else.
I would be sure you did, because that's just the way we do. We're sitting over here channeling whatever is coming into our minds. Okay, now, I want to say to you, I want to go back to that downsized example that I gave earlier about the man that I heard on the radio looking backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think that when we are talking about change of mindset and developing a global perspective and blah, 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 and this little list that we have just given you, I think we can take that story and look at it relative to this list that we've just talked about. And one of the things I want to say is, you are uncomfortable, you are intolerant, because all child's minds are intolerant with not knowing. It's a skill, honestly, that we must develop. And another way of saying that is a skill of trust. Okay? By the way, it's not a light switch you can turn on, but it is something that does turn on deeper and deeper levels the more you remove your childhood issues that tell you that you shouldn't trust. So let's say you don't know, let's say you've been downsized or fired and you don't know where to go. What do you do then? You don't know what you're going to do. Well, the fear is your default. So you go backwards. Why wasn't it like that? Oh my God, look at all, and you might even say, oh, look at all the terrible things you're saying about people that are out of jobs. Oh my God, I'll have such a hard time finding a job. What am I going to do? I don't have the skills I need more education. I should have done this. I should have done that in my life. Oh, there's so many things you can do with that. Here's the truth. God moved you. God moved you.
And I could say from my own experience, back when we had the recession, I guess it was 2008, somewhere around there, I was one of the thousands and thousands of people that lost their jobs. And I can tell you, without a doubt, it was the best thing that ever happened to me as a person, as a spiritual being, because it opened so many doors for me and made me look at things that I never would have looked at. If I had the safety and security of a job, I wouldn't have ever looked at how many attachments I had to how my self-worth was attached to my job. how all the ideas I had about money and my relationship to money, because suddenly I'm on unemployment for the first time in my life, and what a stigma that is, and how humiliating that is to have to go into that office and ask for money, and so I had all these labels that I was putting on stuff that's
what I want to point out. I want you to see the emotional attachment. She's making this about personality. She's not anymore.
Yes,
but can you see?
Yes. So
it's all about what that she's lacking as a personality.
Yes. So I went through that whole process of looking at all of that, and the universe moved me, God moved me, and kept me in that state until I got it. I did not get a job until I got it. And I worked on myself, and I had all this free time on my hands, so why not? So I started to look at those things daily and look at what my reactions were and why was I reacting that way, and I need to work through this. And I became more serious about this work, which was the biggest blessing of all, Martha had been telling me for years that I should be working with clients, but I was only working on myself at that point. And that's when I really dove into this work and really dove into the idea of maybe I can use my experiences to help other people. So losing my job, while at the time appearances on the surface seemed like a bad thing, which is what my ego wanted to label it, it was the biggest blessing in my life.
Yes, but you know why you can't see that when it's happening is because it's chaos.
Yes.
And you have to, the whole spiritual principle here, the whole universal thing that happens no matter where it happens and how it happens, is that it always goes from chaos to order. New order comes out of chaos. Now, that happens on a level in the solar system. It happens when you bring a new puppy into your home or a new baby into your home. It is chaos until the new order emerges.
Yes.
Well, if you're freaking out over chaos, you can just stay freaking out over chaos for the rest of your life, which is, by the way, the ego child's mind. But if you will move through it and deal with those feelings, it's trying to take you somewhere to your good, and the new order is your good. You've got to let it evolve to that. You can't truncate the energy. But that's what we all do, and that's what we did when we were children, and that's why we're left with change is bad, you see?
There's so much to learn in the chaos, because the chaos is just information on top of information on top of information that's being provided to you, handed to you on a silver platter going, here, look at this.
Sorry, we lost the feed. We are back. We never know what's going to happen with our technology. Christina was saying, gosh, Martha, what she said to me earlier was, when she saw me setting this up for the first time, she said, this is much more technical than I've ever seen you do anything. Yes. And of course, and then came my husband, who actually fixed it because I was making a mess of it. And not real technological.
Thank goodness for Michael.
No, thank goodness for Michael. It's the truth in a lot of different ways. Okay. One of the things I want you to realize just about the story that we're telling you about losing your job or downsizing or something is things that, here's a spiritual principle you need to know. Things that are no longer a fit are going to separate. Energetically, that's what happens. We have a dog barking in the background that should not be happening here. But it looks like it's going to happen for a while.
It's okay.
So, things that are no longer a fit must separate. Now, I really want you to know that, because you have to accept that spiritual principle. Otherwise, your life is not going to be very happy. You're going to be railing against something that is one of the laws of the way the world works.
And at a very fundamental level, for all you science-minded people out there, that's how organisms grow. A cell divides. Things have to break apart for growth to happen. It's just the way things work.
That's right. That's a good way of putting it. That's just the way things work. You cannot rail against the way things work. It's part of the deal. Okay. So let's say you have lost your job. What do you do about that? Instead of freaking out like we have so clearly mentioned to you. One of the things that you need to do is to put your energy into the elements you want. Put your energy into the elements of the job you want. instead, you don't know the name of the job. You don't know the company. You don't know the salary. You don't know, but you know the elements you want. For example, do you want to be liked, or would you rather have people not like you? Do you want to travel? Do you not want to travel? Do you want to have a creative job, or do you want to have a job that is just routine and you can barely get by? What do you want here? So I happen to think you do know what you want. You just don't know the name of what you want. So that's what you need to invest your energy in, because what you invest your energy in is what you get more of. Whether it's movement and forward movement, or whether it's stagnation. You can create that too and invest in that and get more of that. I think you're tired of it. That's why you're listening to the show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, when we start on a new way of thinking, sometimes it can be a struggle. And it can be a struggle because your negative bias tells you that change is bad. I want to repeat that. Your negative bias tells you that change is bad. When it hasn't worked out, you ended the energy too early. You weren't thinking energy. You were just scared, you see? And you close up the energy. But number two, we don't know how to handle something as the child. We don't know how to handle things. You know that your brain is not even developed until you're in your 20s. So there are situations that are presented to us as a child that you really don't know your way out of. So if you stay in those fixations of energy back in the past as a child, and you bring that into your adulthood, and that's the part of you that you're working from, you say, even as an adult, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. Now, I'm not making fun of that. I really am not. We all do it. But the fact is, you do know how to handle it. You know, either you know or somebody you know knows. And your job is to be a detective and find out the information and move on it. It's as simple as that. But the reaction of the child is, I don't know, I'm not capable, I can't do it, somebody else has to do it for me.
Yeah, and going back to what we were saying earlier, the reaction is all that white noise, and as long as you've got that noise there, you are not hearing God speaking to you, you're not hearing your higher self, and that's where all the wisdom is going to come from. It's going to tell you where to go, what direction to move in.
Absolutely. So, the interesting thing is, without movement, to the ego child's mind, we are all that awkward little person who doesn't know a damn thing. And that just simply is not true. That's one of the lies that you need to start challenging. Because you may not know it. I mean, I just proved it. I don't know anything about technology. I'm doing the best I can.
But you knew where to get somebody.
But I sure do. I married the right man. I know where to get the right information. Now, I want to talk about change in relationships. Mm-hmm. I thought that would be an interesting subject because, you know, we are told don't marry someone, don't partner with someone and expect to change them. And I actually think that's absolutely right. We cannot partner with someone and expect to change them. However, both partners should be willing to change. And that's how partnerships grow and deepen and become more intimate through the years.
Yeah.
So it's the natural course of things that we change. And if somebody is not changing, if somebody is afraid, if somebody doesn't want to change, you better find that out before you partner with them. It's real important because you remember what I said, the spiritual principle is that if it's not a fit, it's not going to stay together.
Yeah.
Okay? So there is, change is the basis for growth. And growth is the basis for a happy union. That's just the bottom line. So it's very important to not rush intimacy when you are getting to know someone. Personally, I think that everybody's sleeping with everybody too fast without knowing who they are and whether they can do this. So you're not being discerning. Now, a lot of times issues drive this. We think we're not lovable, and we've got to rush somebody into intimacy if we're going to have them, or we may not have anybody else come along. We may be saying it's our age, or the way we look, or that we have too many animals, or too few animals, or we don't have enough money, or any excuse will do.
Yeah.
All right? The fact is, you should be discerning. Discerning is a very spiritual principle when you choose a partner. Your life's going to go that direction. And you want to make sure that no matter what problems come up, they're adaptable and they can work through things. A lot of times, people cannot. They've never learned to work through things. They avoid working through things. They want everything just right on the surface. All right? I saw, Christina and I are both movie lovers, and Christina is an actress as well, as I was in my younger years. And I just got around to seeing for the first time Ordinary People. I'd never seen that movie before. Do you remember that with Mary Tyler Moore?
I do. I don't even know that I've seen it myself. It's
Oh,
such an old movie. I feel like maybe I saw it back in the day, but I don't remember.
Well, spoiler alert, I'm about to talk about that movie.
I think it's safe to spoil it at this point for people.
It's only 30 years old, so I guess it won't matter that I spoil it. I saw it for the first time yesterday, and it was a fabulous film. And it's illustrating exactly what I'm talking about, because on the surface, this family is just ideal. Mary Tyler Moore is married to Donald Sutherland. They have 2 boys. These boys are out sailing one day, and there's a squall that comes up, and one of the boys dies. Unfortunately, this is the boy that the mother loved the most and devoted her life to, and she didn't care about the other one very much. And man, she just can't deal with this. Here's a spoiler alert. You sit there going, oh, come on, stop avoiding things. Everybody else is in therapy. Everybody else is talking about their feelings. It's all coming out, right? And you can see these people that are healing and growing from this. She leaves. I'll never forget this incredible scene. She comes downstairs, she wakes up in bed, and she's alone, and this is right at the end of the film. And she comes downstairs, and she finds Donald Sutherland at the dining room table, and he's crying. And she says, why are you crying? And he goes through a lot of this, and the crux of it is he says, I really don't think you're a very giving person. I just don't think you have it in you. Of course, that's wrong. She did have it in her. She was just avoiding it. But this is the story. I don't think you have it in you, and I don't think I love you anymore. Now, if that happened to you, what would you do? Man, I'd go in that room, and I'd sit down, and I'd put my arms around that partner, and I would reveal myself.
Yeah.
At that point. You know what she does? She turns around. She walks up the stairs, she gets her suitcase out, and she leaves. And that's the end of the film. You have a very nice thing that brings the film up at the end between Donald Sutherland and his son, where they finally tell each other after all these years that they love each other. But wow.
And we all have those moments in our life where we have the opportunity to be vulnerable. And we have the opportunity to give another person the chance to really love us and see us completely. But so many times we do run from that. It's so much easier to avoid that and come from the child and run scared instead of staying and doing the hard work.
And there's just worlds of difference between when you are unconscious and unloving and don't know whose issue this is when something comes up, and when you have a clear idea of what's happening. So you can talk about it. So it's the basis, it's the start of a conversation on a deeper level. And of course, when you reveal to yourself on all the unloving places in you and in the other person, and that's revealed, all that energy changes into a deeper level of love and trust. It's amazing. That is not to say that relationships are not, you're not going to yell, you're not going to be upset, you're not going to misunderstand, you're not going to feel uncared for, because the common themes in any interaction, the common issues are you don't care about me and I never get what I want. Those are in your cells, and those things have got to be disproven, because those are the greatest lies of all. And all the lies that you feel will fit into those two categories. Let's talk about how to make change easier, because we know that all of you all do struggle with change. We know that. And let's talk about that.
Okay.
First of all, I want to say that there are two sides to every coin. And I think that's an important image. Because here's the coin, and all this on the underside is the egoic child's mind. And you really believe all those things are true. But if you will look at it from a higher perspective and get on the other side of that coin, you'll find those things are not true. Something else is true.
Yeah.
We constantly say to ourselves, nothing is what it seems here. And it's not. For example, if you say, I am unlovable because I've never gotten the love, that unconditional love from anyone, I'll say that nobody gets unconditional love from anyone, because nobody knows what unconditional love is until one is in unconditional love, and that takes years of work.
Yeah. And that again is where our issues are pointing the way for us. As soon as you have that moment of feeling, I'm not loved, that's telling you, look and learn how to love yourself. It's taking you to that place. All these emotions, all these feelings are trying to point you to the direction, to that deeper love, that deeper consciousness.
Yeah, I think when we started our advanced course years ago, well, it wasn't advanced back then, but it is now, with Christina and all of these marvelous healer facilitators in that class. I think that everybody was very ashamed of their issues. Do you remember how everybody was?
Yeah.
Oh, nobody talked about them. We were all ashamed.
Yeah.
And gradually, through the years, everybody goes, oh, wait a minute, I've got that.
I got that.
and it isn't anything to be ashamed of, because it's the human experience, and everybody's growing and moving past that. And everybody's issues, everybody else's, we're all just using it in a different way, so it looks different on the surface, but we're all motivated by the same thing.
And that's the quickest way to move in the right direction, is to accept that you have it, instead of trying to hide it and avoid it and label it as bad or shameful. All of those things are just keeping you attached to that and keeping you stuck in that moment. Whereas if you just go, oh yeah, I've got that, let me see what I can learn from it, that's moving you forward. That's propelling you forward to where you want to be.
Absolutely. Something else that you might be interested in is that I think the sense of community is important. You don't have to be in our advanced class, but we've got 75 radio shows that are free on Blog Talk Radio. What if you gathered some like-minded individuals together and you studied those things? What happens if you call in as a group and we talk about some of the principles, and you're asking us to explain some of the things that you are hearing? Or, that's one of the most important things there is. What is not ideal is when you listen to it half-heartedly as you're making bacon and you forget it and don't use it in the week. That's not ideal. So if you can talk about it, study it, talk about it in community with people that do not judge you, but who just want to learn too and are open to learning, and everybody is just fine with the human condition, I think that that's a real powerful tool, don't you?
Absolutely. I feel like that's one of the best things that came out of the class for me, is being able to sit in front of a group of people and be completely vulnerable and say, hey, I've done this thing, or hey, this has happened to me. And you spill it all out, and they're all looking at you with absolute love and acceptance and understanding, because they have dealt with it in their own way. It looks different for them, but it's the same core issues. And that gets you to a place of understanding, I am safe, I can be vulnerable, I can be loved, I can just be completely me, and it's totally okay.
Not only that, but if you don't have a partner in your life and you struggle with intimacy, this is a good, safe place to start
Absolutely.
developing an intimate relationship. With Christina and her clients, with me and my clients, whether they are in relationship right now or not, sometimes their deepest relationship, sometimes the most intimate relationship is with us until they create one. So that you have the experience of that is establishing some very good capabilities that you're going to use later on with other people.
Yeah, that gives you the blueprint for all the other relationships in your life. Yes, I can talk about things. Yes, I can work through things.
Absolutely. You also, we were talking about some tips and jump in there.
I know, we just kind of got off on another tangent.
Oh, it's what we do. One of the things I want to put on the table is it's not enough to know what you want. I think that's a common misperception in spiritual work, that we just need to know what we want and go get it, right? Well, no, you need to know what your blocks are to it, what your specific blocks are to it. And you need to work on them. And this requires tremendous emotional honesty. And here's the rub. We don't want to be that emotionally honest with ourselves.
Right.
That's the whole point of having an energy worker or a psychologist or someone who is doing consciousness work. That they become your guides. They help you pick up things that you don't want to see, that you don't want to know in your time, so that you can not only see those things and accept those things, but the big word here is own those things.
Absolutely.
There's a different energy to ownership, don't you think?
Absolutely. Taking full responsibility for something. And this is something I've noticed with working with people is they get very fearful because they think of the word blame. I don't want to, they want to blame someone else, or they want to blame themselves, and blame is a completely different energy than taking responsibility and ownership. Mm-hmm. Responsibility and ownership is a clean energy. Yes, this is mine. What can I learn from it? Let me move. Where blame is a stuck energy of staying with whatever that thing is.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, we shy away from the word responsibility as ego, too.
Yeah.
It seems burdensome, it seems bad, but what you're really, have you ever asked what you're really responsible for? You're responsible for this moment and making it a good one. All of a sudden, that's a different perspective. Yeah. All of a sudden, that's the flip of the coin.
Right.
You're responsible for this moment and making it a good one. All right? Doesn't matter what's come before this moment. Just matters about this moment, right now, and making it a good one. Learn something, do something, love somebody, care, do a little act of goodness or kindness that nobody knows about.
Yeah, and that's where that word privilege comes in again, too. Mm-hmm. It is our privilege to have the responsibility of this moment. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah. Number 3, I think a good tip is to write down your fear. Write down a fear. And then write down the truth of it, because the fear is a lie. Fears are always lies. They're right directly out of the propaganda of the ego child's mind. And I think they need to be challenged. Okay? Can you think of one?
I was just about to say we need to give them a real world example.
We do need to give them a real world example. What would you suggest?
Weren't we? I think we talked about this once in class, about the fear, something about, we were talking about weight and how we overexpanded it,
Mm-hmm.
The child,
like that I am terribly fat and nobody will love me because I'm fat, for example. I think that's the one you're talking about. Yeah. That's the lie, all right? So if we were going to, we can give several examples of this. So if we were going to do the truth, it might be something well, hi, how are you? Hello, Dadis. We might say that what is the truth is that I am not taking care of myself the way I'd like to. I'm going to start eating better and learning what I need to do for my body. And that and thank you so much, Lisa. We'll address that one in just a minute. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
And that I am valuable as who I am because it's human and I'm always moving. My weight will move and go down or up according to what I want. And that is what I am what I am right now and what I'm becoming. That's a honest way of looking at that.
And the important thing to realize is that perspective is the energy you need to move. That's the energy you need to be open to go to where you're wanting to go. But the energy of I'm fat and I'm horrible and no one's going to love me, that's not going to get you anywhere.
That shuts down the energy, don't you see?
Shuts everything down, and you're going to stay exactly where you are. It's a stagnant
That's
place.
right. And misery comes along with that.
Right.
And futility comes along with misery.
You start layering on top of that emotion after emotion, and then you're so overwhelmed you feel like I'm covered and I can't move.
And that's absolutely right.
And you become, like you said, the futility sets in.
And the futility sets in. Futility always, by the way, goes with the ego child's mind, because the ego child's mind at best is limited. So you bet that futility goes along with it. I think we ought to address what Lisa said.
Yes.
Lisa said her biggest fear, forgive me for just putting it out there, Lisa, but I think everybody can read this,
I
right?
think she typed that on the internet, so it's okay.
What do I know? Is that my biggest fear is that someone will be angry with me. And Lisa, that is a child's mind fear, because let's take that fear and let's call that a blatant lie and say, what is the truth? You want to handle this? You want me to handle this?
You go
Okay.
for it.
What is the truth is I care very much what people think. And I have always been probably too sensitive to what other people feel about me. But I am now in my life, while my background was unsafe, I am now safe, and I am in a loving and good relationship, because I know you are, and that I am fine speaking my mind, because no one is going to take care of me and be my advocate but me, because that's the way it's supposed to be in the world. Because that's the adult in me. I don't have to be angry, and I don't have to be reactive, but I can state the truth, and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I can say that in all honesty and in all integrity and in all love for myself and for someone else. That's the truth.
Yeah, and you said this is Lisa?
Mm-hmm. This is Lisa.
Lisa, you having that awareness, you may have had this awareness before, but today, here and now, having this conversation with us about your fear of someone being angry with you, that's your gift. That's your gift in this moment. So this is your opportunity for everything we're talking about here, this is your opportunity for change, to say, okay, I realize I am fearful of people being angry with me. And what you might not realize is unconsciously you're taking that energy into every conversation you have with someone, every interaction you have with someone. You're carrying that fear into that, which is going to color that situation and alter it. So this is your moment to start switching that.
Yeah.
Go deeper. What is that fear about? That's where working with a good facilitator is going to help you. They're going to be able to drill down to the absolute root of that and help you start getting that out of your way, so it's not in every relationship and in every reaction.
And I want to put something else on the table here, and don't you think for a moment this is any kind of fuss. It is not. I'm just trying to tell you the way human beings work and what this looks like energetically. And what I'm wanting to put on the table is this. We learned that somewhere.
Yes.
From our mothers, our fathers, from our family somewhere. It had a point of origin. Now, whoever that was, or everybody, it wasn't our families, depending on what kind of families we had, we then drag the past into the present, and we layer that on somebody standing in front of us. But I want you to know that this is clearly the fear, this is clearly the ego child's mind, because we're not really loving that person as who they are.
Exactly.
And handling that moment as it really is. We are painting a picture over the top of them that isn't fair.
Yeah.
When we take our moms, for example, and we put it on our partners, and we say our partner is demanding when, say, our partner is just strong. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
you know? But our mothers were demanding, and we interpreted that when we were children, and now we're transferring. That's not fair. That's not loving. So it's very important that we start stripping away these things from our childhoods, and we start becoming, only of the moment right now.
Yeah.
Nothing's gone, but suppose nothing has gone before right now. Suppose this is the start of everything right now. And you're seeing whoever is in front of you right now as just who they are, no more, no less. You see yourself, no more, no less, just who you are.
Yeah.
We're all trying our best. So here we are. All right. Why don't you go into assumptions and labels? I thought what you said earlier to me before we started the show was really good about that.
Yeah. See if I can remember what I was saying. One of the tips for dealing with change is don't jump to assumptions and immediately label a situation. The ego child wants to label. If you think about a child, like we were saying before, the brain is not completely developed yet. So a child can't process complex situations and complex information. They're looking at things as black and white, good and bad. That's what they see the world as. So as soon as you have change come into your life and you label it as bad, that's a red flag. The ego child is in control right now. And so if you don't label the situation, but yet you stay open to the possibilities of what could happen, that's the adult mind. The adult mind is opening the door and going, let me take this information in, let me assimilate it, let me see what it means for me and where it takes me.
The whole idea of labels comes from the ego child's mind. We have overlearned our lessons, and because our parents labeled, a lot of times we label. The fact is, we should not label anything. Everything in the world is neutral, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Even the seeming bad is neutral, and it is our spin that we put on things. For example, death, we can put a negative spin on death, but death is also resurrection, and we have to allow the fact that it's much more than what we narrow our focus and call and label anything.
Yeah.
It's more. Life is more than anything like this that you can name. And we have to be open to that. And that's what consciousness teaches us. Again, the bigger perspective that we're talking about here. Okay. The other thing I want to put on the table, even though we said that, is do learn to observe without judging. I think that's really important. Observation, very important. Discernment, a very spiritual principle.
Yeah.
Very important. Bring that to every interaction that you do have. Something else, too, that I thought we would mention as a tip is meditation. Now, meditation is a lovely principle, and I think that it serves to diminish our egocentric fear so that we can see more, accomplish more, make bigger headway with consciousness. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups for some reason. But what I want to put on the table here that I've seen for a long time, and this is not to disparage anybody's modality, but I have a lot of people coming into me through along my many years of practice, and I'll say, what do you do for spiritual growth? And they'll say, I meditate, but they have not done one thing. They have never questioned themselves. They just use it as a panacea like aspirin.
Yeah.
Take the pain away for a little while. That isn't going to help you. That's going to help you minimally, if at all.
It just needs to be one of the tools in your tool belt. There has to be more going on.
There has to be more going on if you're going to be doing this. It has to be more. Also, I want to talk about something that I think is really important that goes along with your changing, and that is there are often psychosomatic reactions to change. You were bringing in some of those earlier today.
Yeah, when you are faced with change, your heart rate will increase, your breathing may become more rapid, your body is going to have physiological reactions to that. And there are tools you can use, such as meditation and focusing on your breathing, that will help slow those things down And you can use that energy, that amplified energy, for creation instead of the amplified energy in the body just feeling like you're losing control.
That's absolutely right. Also, one of the things we want you to know is what you say yes to today will be less than you say yes to tomorrow. What you're going to do is build a momentum up for being loving, for being unafraid, for being joyous, for being creative. And you're changing a fundamental energy in you. That's what consciousness does as you remove the blocks. So this is why your life gets bigger. We often say our definition of God here is that God is a system of movement, truths, revealing truths. There's always something behind it. It's infinite. And that's why your life should be getting bigger, not smaller.
Yeah.
Because you accept more, the more momentum builds up in the new arena of you.
That reminds me of a story our good friend Tracy told me once about elephants that are rescued that have been injured or something in the wild, and there's this place that takes them in. And when they first bring them in, they put them in a small penned-in area, so that they can feel safe and secure and get used to that area, and they explore that area. And then they slowly move it out and move it out and move it out until the walls come down and they're able to roam free. And they're comfortable with their environment. It's the same thing for us.
Yeah.
I feel like as we say yes to this situation, that pushes the gate out a little bit more, the fence out a little bit more and more and more until we're open to the bigger.
But you guys, you got to push the fence out.
Yes, you got to keep saying yes.
You get that part.
Those boundaries.
You got to keep moving. You got to keep moving, changing,
yes.
growing, and that's the key. And the irony is, even if you don't have everything you want yet, the movement makes you feel better. You're going for that. So,
yes.
Just keep going. I think all of us are rather myopic. We'll try moving. Oh my, I'm about to lose.
Do you have a power cord?
Oh, I don't even know what I'm doing here. So anyway, we're about to lose the feed, so let me hurry up with what I was saying.
Yeah, get your thought out.
Such that it is. We've got to keep moving. Don't shut up when you start changing. Don't close down. Sometimes we move and we get afraid and we close down. I need for you to keep going. I need for you to keep pushing it out. And do know what we're saying. Hindsight really is 2020. It's because the chaos to order theory, and it's a true universal law. Everything goes from chaos to order. God is in the chaos, and God is in the order. So it's the little girl and little boy and all of us that says, "Oh, God's not in this chaos,"
Yeah.
And indeed it is. Let's do a quick prayer in just a second, but I'm going to ask you to please, if you've enjoyed this show, follow us, share us, tell your friends about us, create those study groups. We sure do appreciate it, and we want Christina to come all the time. By the way, we will not be here next week. It's the only week that I think we're missing. I probably will do something. We have just lost our feed for Blog Talk Radio, but that's all right. And we will be back the following week, and we'll have a message for you next week. We don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, do something pre-recorded.
We'll do something pre-recorded. But anyway, we thank you very much for listening. Please do share this with everybody you know. We're trying to get the word out about us, and here we are. Let's do a prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much. And now we surrender anything that has come as an issue for us today, and we say with all our hearts, we now allow it to be given and transmuted into a deeper level of love and appreciation and value for ourselves and for all others, for all of life, for you are in it all, dear God. Everything is you in high or low frequencies, in fear-based frequencies or love-based frequencies. We accept our privilege of going from fear to love, and we say, show us the next step. That's all that we need is the next step for us, and the next, and the next. We thank you, dear God, for all of this. We ask now that we surrender all issues, blocks, needs to hold on to these things, vestiges and related issues, identities over identities, sympathies over sympathies, definitions of self and roles we play that no longer serve us. We thank you so much for all of this. We surrender all of this, all issues, this independent part of our life pattern system and defense system, all enmeshments, one thing to another that holds it all in place, all entrenchments of thought, feeling, or behavior, and all repetitions of any of this in our lives. We thank you so much. And now, we say we take some of these lessons out, just the ones we can use this week, and apply them to our lives and to our seeing the way the world is. And we forgive ourselves all things, knowing every moment of our lives has been perfect and has added to the glorious whole. Thank you, dear God. We are grateful. I'm grateful to this one right here.
Likewise.
I'm so glad that you joined us today, and I'm hoping that she will come very soon and join us all the time, and one day have her own show when she says, I'm ready. Okay? We think she is anyway. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sharing and following us. We really appreciate it. God bless you now. Bye-bye.